So thanks so much for this mayhem that you just subjected everyone through. Could you talk a little bit about the idea for a sequel when you finished the first film? What was it that made you realise you had to revisit this world? Gentlemen, at the end.
Well, we were approached by Searchlight pretty soon after the release of the first one, and so Brian and I sat down for a few sessions and kind of blue sky brainstormed a bit. And we came upon the idea pretty early. It was in the first movie, there's another family mentioned, the Van Horns. And we thought, hey, what if there were a lot of other LaBelle families? And in fact, there's even a coda that was scripted and not shot for the first movie where it was like a convention of LaBelle acolytes. And then there was the nod from Mr. LaBelle at the end towards Grace. And we thought, what could that nod mean? Maybe it's a sign. Maybe she could have an opportunity because Mr. LaBelle has smiled upon her. So, and then we just loved Grace. We wanted to stay with that character and see where she went next.
And then, the stakes are higher, the world is bigger, they leave the house considerably more. What was the process like of expanding that world?
Well, we just kind of instinctively knew that if you did have other families and you just kind of like the actual elite, they're not going to like each other, and there's going to be a huge rivalry. And so it was just kind of like going from that seat, just kind of knowing you can build out from that, create so many more personalities and a lot more conflict. But again, it still keeps Grace front and center at the focus of the story. So.
Yeah, but growing it was daunting because we wanted to keep it focused, right? I think why people love the first movie is that you really are on a journey with Grace. And so introducing, painting on a bigger canvas, but also still allowing the story to take time and be about the things that you ultimately, we hope, care about at the end. These two sisters, and then of course all of the wacky, ensemble characters, like all of that stuff it was important to preserve that because I think in the DNA of what's great about the first movie are those two things. Outside of a bigger world, bigger stakes, bigger action, it's really the characters that ultimately make it all meaningful and matter.
Family was such a big, was an important part of the first one. It was kind of figuring out how to extend that theme into the second one.
Also, we blew everyone up at the end of the first one, so that was a challenge.
I think you guys had the mythology, the plot. We had a lot of that pretty early on to make it bigger, but the other thing that made it bigger was adding the sister, adding Kathryn. That was very late, and that really, I think, that's when it really felt like we had something cool.
Yeah, can you talk about the casting process a little bit? Like, how did that come together?
Well, you guys made Abigail with Kathryn.
Yeah, we fell in love with her making it, and we're like, oh, it's Sam and Kathryn are similar weirdos. Let's try to get them to be sisters, and we talked to you guys about it, and everybody's like, oh, that's what we've been looking for, is that heart that we wanted to have in this movie.
And then you parent trapped them.
Yes, and then we parent trapped them at Tripp's house. Kind of made them hang out, and they were bickering instantly. It was delightful.
It was also easy to cast LaBelle. I mean, he was the only surviving member of the first movie.
It's smarter than the returning cast member
in front of you.
Yeah, so from a production standpoint, because obviously the scale is much bigger, what were some of the biggest challenges and hurdles for making a film on a broader canvas?
I mean, I feel like, and I know, Tripp, you feel this because we talked about it all the time in prep, I think that this movie the making of it felt a lot like the first movie because the ambition of the first movie was stretched far beyond what I think we had time and budget-wise to make. And it was the same with this one. Our appetites and our ambitions had grown because we wanted to make something that was surprising to us. And we also knew that we were going to have to do it in only 4 more days than we had on the first movie. And so it was a real challenge, but the friction of that is something we love because it forces all of us, from the writing, producing, directing, performance, every crew member, it forces you to really focus your energy on what is most valuable, and you don't shoot anything you don't use. That is our motto. Like, don't shoot it if it's not going to be in the movie. And so you have to really plan and really rattle test it. And this team, this is why we are successful, is because we don't let bad ideas show up on the day. We get the script and the concept and the design of it really, really locked in because we don't have a lot of time to play with. It's like a marathon.
I feel like I don't want to admit this out loud.
Oh, I like this.
The pain is part of the process. So, and I think it adds something to us, to the way we do these movies, and I think the audience seems to feel it. So, unfortunately, I think that's how we do these.
Yeah, with that in mind, I'm curious because I haven't seen a film in recent memory that captures like the prickliness of family animosity so well, in such a violent way. Can you talk a little bit about what went into preparing the cast and how they worked together and how you were able to get the different factions to work in the context of the film?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of jumping on what you guys were saying, we had a very short time to cast this movie, and every person, when you cast them, they're such a big piece of the puzzle. And I think one of the things we always love is Guy and Ryan write an incredible script with these great characters, and then how did the actors kind of bring them to life and embody them in their own way. And so we got to spend a little, not a ton, but a little bit of time just getting everybody to hang out and to get comfortable with each other. And I think the biggest moment of that, though, weirdly, was actually when we were filming. It's that club room scene where Sam and Kathryn are tied up. It's the only time everybody was on set together. We shot it for how many days? 2 days, 3 days?
I think it was 2.5.
2.5. Yeah. And that was like really the bonding experience. You were kind of seeing it in real time, and it was early in the schedule, so.
It was literally a bonding experience for them.
Yes, literally.
Could you talk a little bit about how you work together as a directing team? Like, what's that process like?
I mean, I think that it's, we are, I think, the sort of distillation of what this is. It's like I think that we are always challenging each other. It can be really hard when you're making something, because you're getting hit from every angle. There's so many questions, there's so much to think about. And the odds good enough can slip through really easy because it's just, you're in the process of just having to make the thing. And having somebody who knows the concept, the script, the idea, the tone as intimately as you do, we're always just gut checking each other. And if it's not great, then it needs to be better. And I think it can be hard to do that when you're in conversation with yourself. It's much easier when it's two people, and it's even easier when it's an even larger group. And you don't have to have the right answer all of the time. You can say, hey guys, we don't know how to solve this. All these brilliant brains, let's figure it out. And we never have it.
Yeah, I guess I would direct that same question in terms of like how the writing process works, working as a team.
More or less the same. We met in the 8th grade, and we kind of shared the same brain. And so many years ago, and
a natural rhythm that's kind of formed between the two of us. And I know what he's thinking, he knows what I'm thinking, and then when we surprise each other, we know we got something really awesome.
Yeah, the best part is when I read like a final draft and I forgot which lines I wrote because we're that similar. We just have the same sense of humor, same sensibility.
That's great. Just don't remember anytime soon. So I want to talk a little bit about all the different families in the film. Like, how did you go about making them distinct? And do you draw any inspirations in particular when developing those characters? I guess it's a question for that.
Yeah, I think that's where we have the most fun, is building specific characters and just giving everybody a moment that, hopefully kind of shines a light on who they are as a person. No real life inspirations that I can think of. We're just trying to imagine the biggest assholes of the 1% and just go from there. And then just make them fun and funny and stupid or smart. And one of the things we were interested in this time around, because the Lodomus family was so unprepared and so incompetent, was at least some of the hunters, in this case the Danfords and Virage, were actually really scary and really good at this. And so it really upped the stakes for Grace.
I also think it's casting too. It's not just sort of, it's wonderfully written, but it's as the actors came in, you guys were writing the entire time too still, so you could tailor the characters to the actors. So it's very collaborative all the way through.
There's an interesting, this is dorky filmmaking stuff, but having actors come in and read for you when you're trying to cast, you hear what the part is, and you see the limitations and it was almost there at the time. But then that was refined, and that's part of
you see opportunities too.
And it's
exactly.
And you have to, with any ensemble, you have to cast people that know how to do a lot with a little, because you can't give equal screen time to everybody, and they have to feel as lived in as much a part of the fabric of the story as Grace and Faith. And I think that a lot of that is also just the exploration that we do with you guys. I know that there's like backstory for all of those families that isn't really in the movie, but I think that designing all of that, going through that process, having those dialogue scenes that were specifically about Ignacio's show and Bill Wilkins's porn empire and the Rajan brothers horse racing empire, all of that stuff was important for us to start to get a sense of just how varied and interesting all of the families could be and how specific and singular each of those characters could be.
But also, I mean, I think what's interesting is, like, I'm sure I'm not the only one who recognised certain elements of my own family in this film. Like, they show up from time to time. So you have a strong background in horror. Could you talk a little bit about what intrigues you about that space and what some of the possibilities are of working within the genre?
I mean, I think we get to do crazy stuff. And I think it's really fun. These guys write great characters that have a lot of heart and a lot of emotion. And we get to go do all this insane things around those characters. And I think it's, horror specifically allows for that space in such a clear, clean way. I think we just have a ton of fun doing it.
I also think it just deals with basic human emotions. We all know what it is to feel afraid. We all know what it is to deal with family members we don't necessarily get along with. So within all of the craziness is very basic, common stuff that we all have in our own lives.
I do have a question about the use of Total Eclipse of the Heart. What was it? How did you settle on that song in particular?
We had actually, so the Amy Winehouse song at the beginning of the movie, we had actually timed the end of the first movie with that song, and in the edit, and couldn't afford it. It's like very plainly, it was just like out of reach for us on the first movie. So that was the first track that we dropped in to the opening shot and never changed. And Total Eclipse, we had also used in the first movie in the car crash sequence where Grace kicks Stevens in the face and they drive over the bluff. That song, which is 1812 Overture, in the finished movie, we had a version where it was Total Eclipse of the Heart. We loved it, but it felt strange. It sort of like broke the tone a little bit, and but as soon as we read that scene on the page, it felt like, well, this is the perfect. It feels like a wedding song. It feels like it could be a first dance song. It has like so many different gear shifts, and it has so much emotion. It's kind of melancholy, and it was. I mean, we tried a bunch, but it was the first one we tried, and we kept.
I also feel like we knew the studio had already approved the cost in the first one. So yes, on this one.
I think it's the only time in cinema history where it comes down to either Total Eclipse of the Heart or the 1812.
Well, it's perfect. I want to ask you a little bit about the use of, you're talking about dorky filmmaking questions, the use of special effects, and particularly like you use a lot of practical effects. You can feel it. It's a visceral, painful film. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, we love to do as much practically as we can, in large part because exactly what you're saying, it feels real, it translates to the audience really well, and also it puts the actors in that position. So they're feeling it for real. They are all really getting sprayed with stuff. And there's just some magic that happens there that you can't really mimic or fake.
I also feel like there's the moments where you're creating those events. I think that it like galvanizes the crew in an interesting way because it forces everybody to show up like at their best in a single moment because you only get one take and it's messy and there's safety stuff. It's just everyone is paying really close attention, and when it works, it's just the most exhilarating thing. It feels like you've won a sporting event, and I think that the energy of that is really infectious on a shoot, and I think it keeps the crew lively and excited and really engaged in the process.
So I do have a question. So the legendary David Cronenberg is in this film. So could you talk a little bit about that, how he got involved, and was it always going to be him?
It was not always going to be him. I don't think we ever dreamed that we would get David Cronenberg in the movie. It was our casting director's idea as a swing. It was like, we can try it and see what happens. And it happened very quickly. We, of course, were like, yes, please, oh my God, it would be perfect, but there's no way to do it. And then we found out a couple of days later that he was in, and he couldn't have been cooler. He was so generous, so nice, and he was such a big presence on set, because we shot in Toronto, and that's like his hometown. And it really, there was something very special about every day that we were working with him.
I remember he showed up to the production office to do like a photo shoot, which is, you know, how we captured the photo that eventually becomes that beautiful painting, that portrait of him in the lobby of the hotel. And there was like all of this like these whispers like moving through the production. I was like, David Cronenberg's here. I mean, he is larger than life. I mean, he has there's such an aura and such a mystique about him. And I mean, it was just so starstruck working with him.
Well, I'm sorry to say we do have to wrap it up. I just want to remind people you can vote for the film, a QR code that comes up in a second. But all that remains for me to say is thank you so much for this incredible, like, energizing, fun, fucked up movie. It was so